So thank you very much to all of you who joined us here on this Zoom meeting. My name is David Peña. I'm an American English teacher from New Jersey, right now living and teaching in Mexico. Okay. Today I will be hosting a wonderful interview and Q&A with Sruthi Gurudev. She is a young Nat Geo explorer and ocean conservationist who will be telling us a little bit about her work, what's it like to be a Nat Geo explorer, and other similar things. So Sruthi, thank you so much for coming in and being available for this interview. So how are you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, David, and thank you to everyone for joining. I'm very excited to speak with all of you and get to interact. So thanks so much for having me.
Sure. So I'm just going to start off with a couple of questions here. Let's see. My first question for you is, so how did you start with ocean conservationism?
So as many of you know, and many of you might have seen, there are a lot of documentaries and books and movies and art about the ocean. And I grew up reading about a lot of these and seeing these gorgeous images of the ocean on TV and through books as a young person. And so as I grew up, I never really had the chance to interact with the ocean and with water. And for a long time, it was something that I really wanted to do and something that I was very interested in. But one day when I was about 16 years old, I went to the Great Barrier Reef. If any of you guys have heard of the Great Barrier Reef, it's one of the world's largest coral reef systems off the coast of Cairns in Australia. And so when I went diving there, I saw a bunch of these bleached corals. They were white in color, and they were just just completely bleached and very unhealthy. And I was just so sad seeing them because they weren't these beautiful incandescent colors that I was thinking that I would see. And then I was like, well, this is climate change. Climate change is starting to affect the oceans very, very badly. And this is my first interaction with that. And so when I saw that and I left the water, I was feeling really inspired, but I was feeling very upset about it. I'm like, what can I do? So I decided, this is the way I should start getting involved with ocean conservation, by maybe creating an e-magazine or getting involved with organizations that are interested in ocean conservation, because it moved me and it made me feel very emotional. And I think emotions are very powerful, because emotions are the ones that make us inspired and make us take action.
Awesome, thank you. Do you mind telling us, maybe how old were you? What age did you have when you first started diving into ocean conservationism?
Yeah. So when I went into the Great Barrier Reef, I was around 16 years old, but I didn't get the chance to fully delve into ocean conservation until I was about 21 years old. And at that time, I joined an organization called the United Nations Association of Chicago. And that organization is really interesting, because if you guys have heard of the United Nations, what they do is they have volunteers that are in all sorts of different chapters around the world. And you can apply to be an ambassador for any of the or for any of the global goals. So global goals are like life on land, life below water, no poverty, clean water, education for girls. So there's just different social justice and environmental justice campaigning opportunities. And I decided I wanted to join to become an ambassador for Global Goal 14, which is life below water. So when I joined that, they were like, you need to find a project that will help you push the ocean conservation message, and that will help you become an advocate and inspire other people to become advocates for the ocean as well. So I decided that I wanted to create an e-magazine that would spread the voices of young people and collect the stories that young people have around the world, because a lot of people who have different experiences with the ocean and live in vastly different areas of the planet, just like all of us are tuning in from different places around the world right now. They have different experiences with the ocean, and I wanted to tell their stories and help them tell their stories. And so I decided to create this e-magazine. It's called An Hour in the Deep. And the fun fact about An Hour in the Deep is the name is actually inspired by my dive into the Great Barrier Reef, because I spent an hour down there and I was so inspired and so moved by the environmental degradation that I decided to create the magazine that had the same name as that. And so now what I do is I kind of connect with young people around the world, ages 16 to 26. And this is a quick plug. If any of you are between that age, or if you know anyone that's between 16 and 26 who are good writers or artists or photographers, you should really get them in contact with me, because I'd love to involve them in the magazine. So that's kind of how I got started. And once I started doing that project, I was talking to people, I was interviewing people just like you're interviewing me, and hearing their stories and putting that into a little bit of a publication.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I recently just read the term on some of your websites about eco-journalism. I just find that completely brilliant. Tell us a little bit of, what is eco-journalism and how do you go about that?
Sure, of course. So eco-journalism is essentially about telling stories about the non-human world. So, for example, when we think of journalism nowadays, we think, what are the political turmoils in countries? What's happening in government? What's happening in politics? Economy? What about with people? But eco-journalism is all about nature and what's happening in the non-human world, because as we know, nature can't speak. The trees, the ocean, the animals, and all the creatures in the world, they can't talk and they can't communicate like we do. So we as eco-journalists need to go out and try to understand what's happening in the world from a biological, environmental, and chemical basis, so that we can communicate with the rest of the world what's happening in nature and in the environment. So that's what eco-journalism is all about. It's about the non-human world and sharing those stories to inspire other people.
Great. What is, let's say, is there any painstaking process during eco-journalism, or what would you say is it? Well, I'm not saying it's very easy to do. What would you say would be like the most complex tasks about writing professional eco-journalism?
Of course. So as we know, eco-journalism has a lot of different topics and subtopics that go into it. So it's not only just journalism and writing, but it's also politics, economics, world government, relationships between people and nature. So you're bringing in all these different topics, and you need to tell a story. So telling a story about things that you can't directly communicate with, because in regular journalism, you talk to people, you interview them, but you can't put a microphone in front of a rock or a tree and be like, well, tell me about your life, right? You have to take some knowledge in science. You need to communicate with scientists. You have to communicate with policymakers. You have to communicate with day-to-day people, and somehow put all of that information together to tell an accurate story. So it's not just the scientific aspect, but you also need to tell it with emotion so that you can move people. Because with eco-journalism, we want to make people care, and that's the most important thing about the environment and about nature. Is we want to make people care about it. And simply saying facts and figures like 70% of the earth is water, or maybe throwing out a fact or figure about coral bleaching is not gonna make people emotional and not gonna make them want to take action. But you have to write, and you have to speak, and you have to communicate in a way that gets them interested and gets them inspired. And getting people inspired is one of the most important parts about eco-journalism, because that's the only way regular people and not just politicians can start taking a stand to help protect the planet and help protect the ocean. So it's putting all those components together that I would say is the most painstaking, because you have the science aspect of it, you have the writing aspect of it, and you also have the emotion aspect of it.
Okay, so I mean, it's complex in the sense that you can't only focus just on the environment. You also kind of have to be a little bit social and touch the human area, such as scientists and policymakers. Well,
Yeah.
Wow, that's a wonderful activity, like compound of activities, actually, to say the least. Okay, my next question is, so you told us about your e-magazine, An Hour in the Deep. So tell us a little bit about it. So is there a podcast behind it? Is it like a monthly newsletter? How can people get their hands on it?
Of course. So An Hour in the Deep is basically a digital magazine. So the entire thing is online. It's not on a newspaper, so it's not like physical. So you guys can log into www.anhourinthedeep.com later on, and I can maybe drop a link in the chat later. But basically, what I do as the editor-in-chief of An Hour in the Deep e-magazine is that I connect with young people all over the world. So through social media or through organizational groups or really any other means. And what I do is I have 5 subsections of the magazine. The first subsection is called Ocean Science. The second is called Ocean Conservation. The next one is Ocean Solutions of the Future. And then next is Ocean Storytelling. And then the next one is Spotlight. So the contributors of the magazine, who are between 16 and 26, can either write me an article. They can, so if they're really good writers or journalists, they can write an article, or they can contribute art or photography or filmography to put under these sections. So for example, I have a couple of writers that come from the UK who they all live in like etc. And so they give me articles about like coral bleaching or seagrass, like, or they'll under science, of course, or they'll kind of talk about climate change. So, and mangrove forest, there's just so many things. And then under ocean solutions, they'll talk about what are some ways that people are coming up with robotics and technology to help protect the ocean. So they'll talk about like ice fin that goes under Antarctica and measures sea ice levels. And then under ocean storytelling, it can be really a more creative or a personal relationship. So that's kind of what it's about. That's kind of what it's about. So people send me articles and I put them under one of those 5 subsections. Spotlight is actually where I reach out to an adult and a youth change maker who are doing really well in ocean conservation and in the ocean environmental sphere. And I interview them. And then I talk about their careers and their life stories to inspire other young people that they can do it too. Because we see so many, hotshot stars, and we see so many very famous people, and we're like, well, I don't think I'm like them. I don't think I'm like good enough. I don't think I've started off like that. But I want to dispel that and say that all young people can make a difference and everyone can be an ocean conservationist. So as you mentioned a podcast. So with Spotlight, what I typically do is have an interview and record their voice, and then I'll put it on the website so people can listen to us talk. And then I'll also add whatever else they want to be included in their Spotlight feature. So recently I had talked to Professor Jason Gully, who is a glaciologist and a cave diver, and I interviewed him, and he's on there. And then I have a couple more people coming up for edition 2 who are wildlife filmographers, and they take these amazing videos underwater. So that's essentially how it works. And I publish every quarter, so 4 times a year. And I'm also very active on Instagram. So if you guys are on Instagram, please give An Hour in the Deep.mag a follow. So yeah, that's kind of how I do the business. And then I also connect with young people through Instagram.
Nice, interesting. So, and is there a particular office that you have? Is there like a headquarters for An Hour in the Deep? Something like that?
Mm-hmm. The headquarter is me. So basically, An Hour in the Deep is conducted entirely online. So that's the really great thing about it, is that there's no one place that you have to show up at for me to sort of hear. So I connect with people all around the world, and we connect either through Zoom or through Instagram or through email. And since it's entirely online, there's no headquarters, so to speak.
Okay. So I'm guessing as an ocean conservationist, you have traveled around various ports, oceans, and other things as well, other bodies of water. So, how's it like traveling and looking at these different oceans? You know, how is it from your
So,
perspective as a conservationist?
the travel from my perspective, right. So the travel aspect of it has been really great. But the thing is, I haven't done extensive travel. So besides the Great Barrier Reef, I've also gone diving in quarries in freshwater, which is also a different experience altogether. And then also in the Florida Keys. So in the Keys are famous for the beautiful stretches of ocean and the diving opportunities. And I saw coral reefs there, and they weren't as bleached as they were in Australia, but it was still really nice to see healthy reefs and to see all this kind of marine life that you don't, a lot of people don't interact with on a daily basis. So you know what it's like in the water. And when you know what it's like in the water, it makes you more motivated to advocate for that. So for all of you that are listening, if you're interested in ocean conservation, I would suggest you guys maybe get a scuba license or dive underwater to see what it's like, because it's just so beautiful and it's stunning.
All right, will do. Thank you. So going back to one of these points that you mentioned, um, does somebody like me or anybody else for that matter, do we have to be a marine biologist, or do we have to be a professional oceanographer or something of this sort to be able to contribute more to this?
Right. And my answer to that is absolutely not. I don't think in order to be an ocean conservationist, you don't have to be a marine biologist. You don't have to be an oceanographer. You don't have to be a typical ocean science. You don't have to study that in college, and you don't have to have that as your main job. I didn't study ocean science at university. I actually studied finance. I was in commerce. You don't have to be like directly, you don't have to, like tailor your education around it if you haven't already, because it's not too late for anyone. In my opinion, I think that anyone can be an ocean conservationist, and that means just it's all about finding your niche. It's all about finding a way that your interests and your skills and your talents can connect to ocean conservation or saving the planet in some way. So for example, if you're very good at community like you can, if you're really good at community organizing, you can rally up the community to do a beach cleanup. You can be like, okay, collect like 7 people that you know are your friends and you know that are interested in the environment. You can say, everyone, let's meet at Saturday at 5 p.m. At this beach, and let's collect all the plastic. And then you can keep doing that every Saturday, and you're a marine conservationist. You're an advocate. You're doing things. Or if you're really good at science, you could start collecting your own data and doing citizen science. And citizen science is really cool because anyone can do it, not just scientists who are trained. I have several friends that are citizen scientists, and they're collecting data on what kind of plastics and what kind of microplastics are in the ocean. And they're doing it all by themselves. And or if you're a very good writer or an artist, you can create an Instagram where you can connect with other people and create art. For me, I really like writing, and I really like journalism and publications. And so what I did, I used those interests and talents to put together the magazine. So in the same way, you guys can do that. Or if you like podcasts and speaking, or if you like music, you can make music about the ocean. You can sort of sing about it, or sort of imitate what ocean creatures sound like. So you can use your talents to fulfill that. So yeah.
All right. So yes, you actually went into the second point. I was going to ask, what can anybody or someone like me just do to participate in? You gave us some very applicable and practical ideas as to do that. Definitely where I am located right now, I'm a little bit far from a beach. I'm basically in the middle. So, but still, I guess for someone maybe like me who is quite a distance away from like the local ocean or the local beach, people can still contribute in a, let's say, digital way or physical. If it's digital, you mentioned through writing and other creative sorts of work. that we can definitely send over to you. And if we're near a beach, we can definitely do, a cleanup, as you mentioned. Any other tips?
I had a couple. I had one more tip actually that you just reminded me of. So thank you for that. So I was actually stuck in Chicago. So if you guys know where that isn't on the map, it's like right in the middle of America. It's in the Midwest, and like there are no bodies of water remotely close to it except the Great Lakes. But I'm more interested in the ocean rather than the Great Lakes. So what you could always do is you can join groups. You can join like organizations that are online, because so many of them operate entirely on Zoom. So you don't even have to go in person. So the way I dealt with my desire to help and protect the ocean is by joining like these groups that have a lot of advocates and have a lot of like ocean. So activism is another route that you could go to if you're not interested in, like, if you don't have time to like drive all the way to the ocean, you can be an activist. So that's another thing. You can join groups, and other people can give you the opportunities of what to do. So there's a lot of groups out there like Sustainable Ocean Alliance or like Youth Council for World Oceans Day. There's so many opportunities out there. So that's the other tip I would have.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, and we'll devote a couple of moments to actually, if you would like to share in the chat, any way we can contact you and contribute to the magazine, contribute to the cause. I mean, feel free to post that in the chat whenever you have a chance. And if anyone here in the meeting would like to also contact Sruthi and know how to contribute to what she's doing, feel free to do so as well. Okay, so let's see. All right, so I'm going to allow people now in the meeting to you can raise your hands or speak directly. If you guys have any questions that you would like to ask Sruthi, you can do so. You can also post your questions or comments in the chat, and I will be reading them in the session. All right, so, okay, yes. So guys, you have her Instagram, and I'm guessing that is the second an email, the one that says an hour in the deep.mag, is that, or is that a Twitter?
Second. I have two. I have a personal, and I also have a magazine account. So if people want to talk to me, because I get messages on both. So if you want to directly message me about how you can get involved, if you're a young person or if you know another young person you want to be published on the magazine, just reach out to me through those. And I can also drop my email if you would like that too. So, but Instagram is usually how I've been getting a lot of messages. So let me just drop my email.
Sure. So in the meantime, if any of you have a question, you can use the Zoom icon. You can raise your hand or unmute yourself. Okay, so I have a question here. It says, what is the first thing you remember you did for the environment? Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was very young, I think I remember going on a beach cleanup, and just the level even then, which is about, because I'm 23 now, and like, when I was like just like 10, like 15 years ago, there was still a lot of plastic. So I remember a beach cleanup being the one thing that scared me so much that I felt like, wow, I really need to help out the environment. So it can be just as easy as that. And then another thing for the environment is it's just doing anything to help out. So recycling, taking like small sort of steps to change. So even getting rid of like microplastics, so not using like straws or other like styrofoam, and using like a metal water bottle are just tiny steps that I remember taking when I was younger. But the very first thing I think I remember is just doing a beach cleanup and getting near the water and seeing all of the waste. So that's what I remember the most.
Okay, thank you. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw Joao's hand first, and Marcos. Was there somebody who spoke before Joao?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
But you can go,
Yes.
Marcos.
Okay, go ahead, Joe. No
Okay.
problem.
So my question is about we know that in general the oceans are polluted in our world. But I would like to know if it is possible to know what is the region or the place in the world where the ocean are more polluted.
That's a really good question. It's hard to say exactly what regions are the most polluted in the ocean, because I think like essentially even in the deepest part of the ocean, like the Mariana Trench, you see plastics that have permeated so deeply. But there is a giant garbage a garbage patch in the Pacific that I think is like, that's kind of what's collecting all the pollution the most. But in terms of geographical area, it's hard to say exactly where is the most polluted. But the thing is, I'm sure you've heard of all these oil spills. So I know in Sri Lanka there was a ship that leaked a ton of oil, and I also know off the coast of Mauritius about last year the same thing happened. And I think now somewhere near in Mexico as well, off the coast, that the same situation has occurred. So I think wherever the spills are happening is the places where it's the most polluted. But a particular region, I'm not sure if I know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Marcos, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you. Well, I would like to ask you about what is your opinion about what is the weakest part of the communication when about this topic, no? Because I think that people look scared the situation what happens. For example, the flood, the forest, the forest fires, the oiled seas, like the problem in Mexico last night with the loading pipe, the raptor of the loading pipe, the fire over the ocean. The people look at this and they scared, but they don't have the same awareness about the causes of this situation. When they use a car, they don't make the relationship between using a car and the pipe of oil broken in the ocean. And I think, do you agree with this weakness of the communication in this part of the taking care of the topic? I think the communication in this part is weak.
Yeah, that's a really great point that you brought up. I think the ocean conservation communication and science communication in general is extremely important, so that people can know exactly how their actions can impact something that happens at sea. Not directly in most cases, but a lot of times indirectly. And so for a portion of what you said when you talked about communications, when you read news briefings and eco-journalism and articles, a lot of times they talk about the negatives, and they talk about how the earth is like crashing and burning, and there's just so much carnage going on. But the thing is, with eco-journalism and science communication, I think it's really important to have solutions-based optimism. So not being so negative about how how the ocean is polluted, but having an optimistic outlook about how it's in our hands to fix it, but offering up solutions as well. And that kind of connects to what the magazine that I run wants to do. We want to talk about the future of ocean solutions, and so talk about what can we do, and what is the science out there that is going to be combating these issues, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of that. And then about impacting other people that read these news. You said it was like, your question was essentially how do we get them to be involved, and how do we get them to care or understand their impact, just to make sure I understood you. Yeah. So to answer that, I think the most important thing is, again, the solutions-based optimism and giving them a sense of hope, or inspiring them to take action, because people think, well, if it's only one person, if I'm the only one doing this, there's no point because there's so many people out there. But I think sharing sharing your story about what you do and sharing with other people through social media and creating this network of conservation is something that's really important. And having young people, because like youth at school especially, I think that's when you start developing and building the habits of how you treat the environment. So like using recycling and using less like fossil fuels, and that too, putting pressure on the government and the policymakers, because a lot of times it's not our fault, because we're just people, right? We don't really make these big decisions that go into environmental policy. But joining campaigns or becoming activists, or sending letters to policymakers, I think that's one way that we can make an impact, because otherwise it's very difficult to just do anything big from one person. So banding together and figuring out how we can be optimistic but also have a solution is the way forward. It's just, there shouldn't be negativity, but unfortunately a lot of times there's a lot of negativity about what's happening to the earth and people feel hopeless. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. It was very interesting, your answer.
Okay, thank you so much. I see one more that says, have you noticed changes in the behavior of the overall population regarding environmental protection and awareness? That's a great question too. I have. If you guys have heard of Greta Thunberg, the Swedish youth activist, I think when she blew up in popularity, environmental policy got put on the forefront of people's minds. And with politics, especially now, environment is something that has come into the forefront, and has people have gotten a lot more worried. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but there's something called eco fatigue, which means people are very tired now of hearing of negative environmental news. People are scared and people are worried. It affects their mental health. So I have noticed a lot of organizations and a lot of people that are now putting like these environmental and pollution minded topics at the forefront of their organizations and their nonprofits. So I think the overall population, people are very, very conscious about it. So I think things are changing, and I think the younger generation are now getting into activism, and that's what's changing the perspective.
Great,
but
you.
It's, I think, something that we make sure that people are constantly excited about, rather than
I have questions about these things between the solutions between the CO2 emissions, for example, and why my question is why the sea pollution is not covered, like, for example, CO2 emissions, carbon emissions, for example. Why, for example, contact pollution or microplastics in the ocean is not be popular, or is not well known, like, for example, CO2 emission?
So that's also a good question. All of you guys are asking really great things. I think generally in terms of the media and the news outlets that talk about environmental degradation and policies are kind of they're not too focused on the ocean, because a lot of times people are more concerned about what's happening on land, and I think that's very dangerous, because we hear so much about deforestation and mining and other such land-based extraction and environmental problems, that people seem to forget all about the ocean and the sea, which is a problem, because the ocean, as I'm sure all of you know, is a carbon sink, and it's something that regulates the climate and the weather. And people just seem to forget about it because a lot of times a lot of us are not in the ocean. We don't like sail across it all the time. A lot of times we're stuck on land and we don't see exactly face to face what's happening. But on land, we see that like trees are getting cut down. We see it happening face to face, and it's more tangible. But with the ocean, it's more intangible because you don't see it. And I think that's why news and media are not focusing on these massive issues. But I want to let you guys know about something called deep sea mining. Deep sea mining is something that this kind of relates, because deep sea mining is now used as a substitution, they're hoping to use it as a substitution to land-based mining, because on land, mining for like metals and stuff is getting very expensive, and it's getting like people are having very unfair and inequitable labor conditions. But a lot of these countries like Germany, China, Japan have seen that underwater there are these things called polymetallic nodules, which are built up of minerals like manganese, copper, nickel, etc., that are like in the deep sea, so very, very deep, that they go and mine these metals, and then they'll sort of when they extract them and then they mine like hydrothermal vents and whatnot, they're going to be destroying all of these like ecosystems that you can't get back and that are extremely precious. But that's also kind of the relationship between land and sea. I think that's now people are moving on from extracting the land. They're turning their gaze to the ocean. And so that's something that I wish that we could see more on the news, but people don't report on it because it's not directly affecting us.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. All right. So yes, definitely. As Francisco also mentioned, he's actually one of my former English students as well. Microplastics is something that I actually talked about in another event. The importance of reducing even stuff like that. Well, we have less than 1 minute, so I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who was able to come in, spend some time with us, learn about Sruthi's work and how we can all contribute in one way or another to the ocean conservationist projects, as well as just doing our thing and making sure that at least we can also teach somebody else to continue to care for the ocean. All right. So Sruthi, thank you so much. A big thank you to you for being my special guest today for this interview. I really enjoyed it very much. I hope to see you in another session again. And thank you all for coming in.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for everyone for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with all of you. Feel free to message me on Instagram or send me an email. I'm very happy to hear from you guys. And thank you for all the wonderful questions.